Jaden Daniels and the Commanders sent a message to the NFL this week that he's back and they are back. Katie Caldwell, Jeff Lloyd back here with you today. Jeff, 27 unanswered points to get the win over the Chargers on the road. You and I both liked LA in this one. What stands out to you most in how this Commanders team played?
I think the thing that you come away with most impressive is that this was a game where Washington didn't have Terry McLaurin, and
Mm-hmm.
so much that he means obviously just as far as a leadership capacity and those type of things, but and that's not even astounding his talent on the field. The biggest thought and concern was going to be, where was Jaden Daniels?
How healthy is he?
And when your quarterback comes back, and obviously it's a quarterback with a very large amount of positive mobility to be game changing. Is he
Mm-hmm.
coming back? But he's limited. But from what we saw, obviously, I think Jaden Daniels is even with the brace on, is still a hell of a lot mobile than where other quarterbacks are.
Yeah.
You pair that, of course, with I guess I don't even think he needs a full name. I think we should just say Bill. That's it.
Bill,
He
yeah.
should just be Bill. That's it. And then now you see him finding his way. And I think for Washington, using, him, it's going to be a thing where, he's not going to be like a bell cow type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're going to lose a little bit if you do try to get him near that 20 carry plateau, where he's going to take a little hit and you're not going to just get that overall quickness that he has. But I think Washington, and I think the thing was probably best that maybe kind of took one on the chin to start and went down 10-0 because it
Mm.
was like, all right, well, guys, where are the excuses here? You know what I'm saying? We think we're a good team. We were in the NFC Championship game. We know obviously the Chargers or a team that a lot of people felt pretty confident about this year. And then just basically, certainly it was an aid of the defense. There's no question about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, you get both units playing as one, you create some turnovers, you capitalize on the turnovers. That's kind of how you get in a situation like Washington did yesterday, where you go out, and it's not the most difficult place to play. It's a very difficult place to travel to.
Yeah.
I think teams get excited to go to SoFi, so yes, it's daunting the travel out there, but I think once teams get out there, they're very much looking forward to, you playing the most beautiful, obviously, city football weather-wise there is, and then you
Mm-hmm.
throw in the fact you're playing in that stadium, and I think it just kind of gets guys' juices flowing, and it certainly did for Washington yesterday.
Well, and you mentioned it. No Terry McLaurin in this one. I've been pleasantly surprised with how Debo Samuel has played this season. So 8 catches for 96 yards in this game. What are your thoughts on him this season and how he's playing with this team? I wasn't sure if maybe he was washed. I'll be honest.
I think there was some thought to that, and it's tough because you knew San Francisco was dealing with financials and
Hmm.
they were gonna have to move a guy or two, but it was, is he washed or, are they just moving him because of the financials? Is it a combination possibly of the both? But, it's not that long to go back to where Debo Samuel and up until about the time Christian McCaffrey got there, Deebo Samuel was one of the scariest, most versatile offensive players in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
And then once McCaffrey got there, it was kind of like, well, we don't really need you to do that. And we have Christian McCaffrey to handle that part of it. And certainly what Christian McCaffrey, brings as a receiver as well, kind of maybe X'd out essentially what Debo does. And it certainly took a little bit. It was slow footing for Debo to get established there. But, as much as McLaren is going to be your playmaker, you kind of need somebody, that you can justify, 3rd and 4, or a guy that you can throw the ball to underneath the sticks and certainly has the athletic ability, the speed, the physicality to get you that yardage needed to keep the chains moving. And, Debo's always been a guy, the more dialed in you can keep him in, the more you get out of him. I think it's kind of
Mm,
what also happened in San Francisco. The further he kind of fell down the totem pole, maybe it wasn't that you always got, the best version of Debo Samuel teammate, guy in the clubhouse. But, you put together a couple outings like this for Debo in Washington, that just takes a
mhm.
team that everybody has a lot of, positive thoughts for here in 2025 and probably just raises the potential of what this Washington team could be.
Let's look at the bigger picture with this team. Now we're 5 weeks into the season. We're starting to get a better idea. Are they the real deal? Because the NFC still looks pretty wide open to me.
The NFC is it's gonna be wide open, and I think we're gonna get to the point where we're gonna see some attrition, where some of these teams, start going against each other. Right now you would figure Washington and Philly at best, maybe Philly gets a split out of that, and we'll
Mm,
get to Philadelphia probably a little later on today in another video. I think, it was a chance to step back and work, without Jaden Daniels and kind of work on some things. And, as far as because Jaden Daniels is such a significant impact player with what he can do, obviously with his overall athleticism, his arm strength, his arm accuracy, that when you took a step back and it was Marcus Mariota for a little bit, that's more where we can kind of replenish our X's and O's and
mm,
find out. Look, Jaden Daniels is going to work with anything. But that doesn't mean it necessarily works with the rest of the offense.
right.
What works with Jaden Daniels is this great for our offensive line as far as a blocking scheme. These routes, do these all complement our wide receivers? How do we incorporate, that we did make a huge change in the running game, going from Robinson, obviously now going with Merritt. And so I think that gave him a chance to like polish up some things and then reinsert obviously their ultimate X factor into their offense and Jaden Daniels. So I think it's one where I think, they're probably feeling really good about themselves. You sack Herbert 4 times, you
Hmm.
get 2 turnovers, you capitalize on those. And, when you can get a game and you walk off the field, certainly a positive victory like this, came back from 10-0, but then you can kinda look at all phases and say, "Well, everything's kinda clicking for us right now." That's when teams kinda get the feel, get the potential that, "Hey, I think a run is coming."
Quick pause. If you haven't subscribed to the BetCanada YouTube channel, you can do so below. It's free and it helps support our channel so we can keep bringing you NFL and NHL content. Now, back to the show. It does feel like the Chargers defense finally broke without Khalil Mack there as the focal point of that pass rush. Let's actually touch on, we will have an Eagles video coming, so stay tuned for that. Let's touch on the division right now because, as we'll talk about in a different video, the Eagles lead the NFC East, but we saw again how they struggled to play a complete game. Is this Commanders team maybe the most complete in the division? Because I look at the Cowboys, so much hope on offense, but I wouldn't say in terms of defense they're the most complete. Would that be the Commanders?
I'd say right now, yes, and, when you say Philadelphia, it's, "Oh, well, the potential to get better," which you all believe, but it's weird to use potential. It's not like there's anything new necessarily in offense that they're trying to work in,
Right.
and we had all these same conversations last fall about Philadelphia. Maybe the loss is gonna be the one that changes it for Philadelphia,
Mm.
but for Washington right now, you gotta think that that's where all the momentum is. Dallas certainly is doing, I would say a nice job, and they're treading the waters without CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
But, you talk about it, no Terry McLaurin. You still go out and you put 27 up on the road, and it wasn't just like, any road team. It was a Chargers team that's obviously played some pretty good ball up until maybe the last 2 weeks. And then I think with Daniels, the thing with Daniels is as great as he was last year, you have to assume there's still more there. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? It's only his
absolutely.
2nd year. He's really just kinda, scratching the surface, and maybe it's gonna be a point maybe where it's less Jaden Daniels overall athlete, but more growth of Jaden Daniels, true quarterback, what he can do from the pocket. And if you're Washington, this is just a really kind of fun scenario to be in right now because, you weathered the storm without him, and now you're in a good position. Philadelphia, yes, it's flawed. I don't think it's not fixable. But if you're Washington, you got to say, hey, look, we went as far as anyone else in the NFC could go last year. We
Mhm,
went to the NFC Championship game. We know this Eagles team. That's going to be what defines it, obviously, is going to be whether or not Washington, can basically keep their own house, which means win
mm.
division games, which means beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Heck, maybe even sweep the Philadelphia Eagles. That's what's going to have to ultimately come for Washington. But I think, they have the nice blend of youth and veterans, and they have a no nonsense coach that's just going to keep pushing them hard and expect results. And I think a lot of these kids are kind of like growing into it and kind of embracing the type of coaching they're getting there in Washington. And when you have players given to coaching work hard with players for overall improvement, and you're seeing success, it makes for a pretty happy locker room matrimony, which is certainly where Washington is right now. And it just goes to show you the ebbs and flows of this week, from I mean this league from whether it's 1 to week 5, or even just a 2 week period, and just how quick a turnaround can be, or how positive a team can feel within a week's basis, just by when they get all their ducks in a row.